She showed up with the intention of provoking him, but Barack Obama did not take the bait. He smiled, waited, and then spoke. And for that brief instant, tranquility reigned supreme. It began just like any other debate on television. Smiles of respect, warm greetings, and the usual exclamation of how wonderful it is to be here. However, that calm did not last very long. Everyone who was watching could tell that something much bigger was about to happen. The stage appeared flawless. The table where Barack Obama and Ivanka Trump were seated was illuminated in a golden glow by soft, bright lights. The moderator, who was known for keeping the peace during heated exchanges, was seated in between them. The evening's topic was leadership in contemporary America. At the same time, loaded. People still remembered Obama from his calm demeanor, stoic posture, a mild smile, and patient eyes. He possessed the quiet self-assurance that came from years of being under pressure. He didn't have to demonstrate anything. The mere presence of him was significant. Ivanka, on the other hand, appeared polished and confident. Her hair perfectly done, her tone smooth but deliberate. She carried herself as though she had practiced and believed in her lines. This wasn't just another debate to her. She could use it to uphold the image of her family and her father's presidency. The moderator began by having a conversation. Obama laughed softly at a joke about how he seemed to age slower than most presidents. Ivanka gave a polite smile and said that her father often said that his job kept him energized rather than exhausted. At first, it was all light and pleasant. The kind of talk that makes people feel comfortable before the real conversation starts. However, there was a subtle tension concealed beneath those smiles. It was evident in the pauses and the way their eyes met for an excessive amount of time. That room was filled with history, political rivalry, pride, and two very different views of what power truly meant. Obama received the moderator's attention first. "Mr. President," he began, "you have mentioned numerous times the significance of character in leadership. What does it entail for you?" Before speaking, Obama thought for a moment and gave a small nod. His tone was gentle yet firm. "I think character is what you do when no one's watching. It's how you treat others who have nothing to offer in return." The audience nodded, some clapping lightly. Ivanka listened while waiting for her turn to speak, giggling with that refined grace. The moderator then turned to look at her. "Miss Trump, you've said a lot that your father taught you how to lead by doing things. How would you characterize his method?" Ivanka smiled more broadly. She boasted, "My father believes in results. He believes real leadership isn't about long speeches or perfect words. It entails taking bold actions even when others do not comprehend you." The words hung in the air, clearly aimed at Obama's calm and thoughtful style of governing. Obama did not respond. He kept his eyes on her, listening, his face unreadable. The moderator leaned in slightly after spotting the comparison. "So, you're saying that being a leader means doing something, even if it means making mistakes?" Ivanka gave a nod. "Exactly. Some leaders spend more time talking about unity than actually building it. My father doesn't wait for everyone to agree before doing what he believes is right." The audience was silently mumbling. The air became slightly thicker. Although Ivanka had chosen her words carefully, everyone understood what she meant. Obama gave a polite smile. "That's one way to look at it," he said softly, but he didn't add more. The moderator chuckled awkwardly, trying to lighten the mood. Although the tension was already rising, it was nice to have both perspectives present tonight. With a grin that could have meant anything, Ivanka smirked at Obama while leaning back and crossing her legs. Amusement, challenge, or confidence. She was prepared to proceed. The next question hit closer to home. "Ms. Trump, what do you think?" the moderator asked. "Is the biggest difference between your father's leadership and President Obama's?" Ivanka's smile turned sharp. "I believe that my father sets the example. He doesn't hide behind words. Speeches and memoirs are one form of legacy building, while action is another." The tone was instantly altered by that line. It wasn't just a political statement, and it was personal. She had just taken a direct swipe at Obama's post-presidential life, implying that his accomplishments were nothing more than talk and no real action. And the audience gasped softly when they realized this. Obama didn't flinch. He simply tilted his head slightly, looking at her with calm curiosity, almost as if he was giving her a chance to go on. Ivanka mistook his silence for hesitation. She went on to say, "It's easy to sound wise when you are no longer the one making the difficult decisions. My father doesn't have that luxury. He faces them every single day." The audience went completely quiet. Even the moderator seemed unsure whether to step in. For a few seconds, it looked like Ivanka had won that moment. Her expression said it all. Proud, certain, and confident, Obama did not move. No reaction, no rebuttal. He simply looked at her, hands clasped loosely in front of him. It appeared as though those few seconds of silence lasted much longer. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for him to say something, anything. But he didn't. Not yet. He just smiled, a calm, knowing smile that suggested he was waiting for the right time to respond. The kind that said, "You think you've cornered me, but you've only given me the key." With a smile, that quiet patience was the calm before the storm, even though the audience hadn't yet heard it. Obama wasn't ignoring the insult. He was establishing the scene. Additionally, when he finally made the decision to speak, he would flip the entire discussion upside down. The studio became tense like a calm storm. What had begun as a calm and respectful conversation was now heavy with unspoken challenge. She was aware that Ivanka's argument that actions speak louder than words had been accepted. She smiled with the kind of smile that conceals both confidence and calculation, the corners of her lips being slightly raised. She was not done yet. No, not yet. The moderator, sensing a spark but not a flame, turned to Obama again. "Mr. President, what is your response to the notion that some leaders advocate for change while others actually implement it?" Obama gave a small, measured breath. His hands rested loosely together, his voice steady. "Change," he said softly, "doesn't always look loud or dramatic when it's real. In small towns, hospitals, and classrooms, it may occasionally take place quietly. Leadership isn't just what you do for people who agree with you. It's what you do for those who don't." The audience nodded. Ivanka, on the other hand, jumped back in before the mood could change. She was not going to let the opportunity pass her by. She said, with all due respect, speaking calmly but with a sharper edge, "That seems good. However, outcomes, not words, drive human behavior. My father built things. Actual things. Businesses, jobs, opportunity. He did more than just give me hope. He designed it." The moderator looked at Obama and then at her to determine whether this was getting too confrontational. Obama gave no reaction. His stillness made the air feel even tighter. Ivanka mistook his silence for weakness, for hesitation, and that was when she decided to push further. She crossed one leg over the other and looked straight at him. "You know," she said, "some people say leadership is about grace, but grace doesn't pay the bills. Maybe that's why so many people felt left behind during your time in office. Although you spoke beautifully, where was the real change?" The crowd murmured. That line hit hard. It wasn't just a policy criticism. It was personal. She was attacking his reputation, his legacy, even his connection with ordinary people. She was daring him to respond. Obama remained silent, his gaze fixed on her, and his expression was hard to read. For a brief second, the silence almost made it look like she'd struck a nerve. Ivanka continued because she saw an advantage. "Mr. D, President, it's easy to look calm and wise when you're out of the spotlight. When you're not the one making the tough calls. My father doesn't get that luxury. He doesn't get to just talk about hope. He has to deliver it." Her words were sharp but smooth, wrapped in a tone that pretended respect while cutting deep underneath. She smiled proudly as she turned to face the moderator as if to declare, "I've won this round." The moderator laughed nervously. "Strong points from both sides," he said, trying to soften the moment. But nobody was paying attention to him. Obama attracted all attention. Everybody was curious to see how he would react. He didn't, not immediately. He looked thoughtful, almost amused, like a teacher who just heard a confident student make a mistake in class. He shifted slightly in his seat, but remained composed and calm. He didn't rush his words. He was choosing them carefully, waiting for silence to do the work for him. Ivanka noticed. and for the first time a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. The silence was lasting too long. The smile she wore began to look more like a mask than confidence. Being met with silence was a new experience for her. She was used to quick rebuttals, fast exchanges. Obama's quiet made her words echo back at her, heavier than when she'd spoken them. Finally, he leaned forward slightly and said in a low, even voice, "Ivanka, you mentioned results. You're right. Results are important, but what kinds of results are we referring to here?" Despite his calm demeanor, there was steel in his voice. A leader can open offices, build towers, and make money. But if those results only benefit a few, is that leadership or just self-interest, disguised as success? Ivanka tried to respond, but Obama didn't stop there. "You said your father built things." "That is correct. But real leadership isn't about building things for yourself. The goal is to establish trust. That's something money can't buy." The audience gave a soft clap. Ivanka's smile faltered. Obama spoke with ease and without rushing, but each one was precise, like a slow blade cutting through noise. After that, he stopped once more to give her enough time to think she could recover. "With respect, mister," she said as she stood up slightly and tilted her head. "Perhaps moral rants are getting old, President? They require action. My father acts. People adore him because of this." Obama smiled faintly, almost kindly. He said softly, "And that's why they fear him as well." That single line shifted the air in the room. The unexpected response caught Ivanka off guard, and she blinked. Obama presented facts without sounding enraged or emotional. His calm tone made the words hit harder. Ivanka made an effort to laugh it off, but her voice got thinner than it had before. Obama slowly nodded. "I wouldn't say fear. I'd say respect. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference when power becomes the only goal." Again, the audience murmured, and the energy moved in his direction. Ivanka tried to speak, but she couldn't think of anything that wouldn't sound offensive. For the first time, her confidence slipped. She looked toward the moderator, but he was watching Obama now as if he too wanted to see where this was going. Obama did not go any further. He leaned back and said quietly, "I understand loyalty. I respect family. However, strength is not displayed when loyalty prevents you from speaking the truth, even to yourself. That is submission." The room stopped talking. The silence was not caused by boredom or confusion. The silence of realization was it. In comparison to what he had just said, Ivanka's earlier jab now seemed insignificant. Obama didn't smile or gloat. He just looked at her with calm empathy, as if he wanted her to understand rather than feel embarrassed. But Ivanka's composure had cracked, and though no one said it aloud, everyone watching knew. This debate had just shifted in his favor. The storm she had started was beginning to turn back toward her. The studio's air felt thick and almost heavy. The long silence between Ivanka and Obama was only broken by the soft hum of the lights above. She had been upbeat and certain of her position, but the silence was now going further than she had anticipated. Unsettling was the man sitting across from her who remained silent. Obama didn't look angry or insulted. He just looked patient, and that patience was more unsettling than any outburst could have been. In an effort to regain the calm she had always displayed in public, Ivanka shifted slightly and adjusted the cuff of her sleeve. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that said, "I'm still in control." But deep down, she could feel it, that slow, creeping feeling that the room was vanishing from her. The moderator, hoping to move things along, spoke carefully. "Let's bring this back to leadership," he said. "Both of you have discussed results and strength. However, how do personal values influence those results? Can family influence the way a leader makes decisions?" That served as Ivanka's cue. She straightened her back, and she quickly found her voice once more. She stated with conviction, of course, family shapes leadership. "The best example of that is my father. Everything he does, every choice he makes is for his family and for the country he loves. Loyalty to his people, to us, and to his own beliefs drives him. That's what makes him a strong leader." As she spoke, she almost dared Obama to put her to the test by looking at him. But he didn't. No, not yet. She went on to say, "I've always admired him for that. He does not distinguish between the personal and the political. His foundation and motivation are his family." She remarked, "That line sounds good, rehearsed, but powerful." She anticipated applause, or at the very least a respectful nod. Obama, on the other hand, took a moment to look down, almost as though he were quietly contemplating something. His eyes met hers again when he looked up. Additionally, there was a distinct calm that was significant. "Family is important," he said softly. "It shapes who we are." "That's understandable." Ivanka accepted it as agreement with a small smile. "Exactly," she said quickly. "Family gives purpose to everything we do." However, Obama's subsequent remarks altered the entire atmosphere. "Baron is your son?" he asked slightly as he leant in closer. It was quiet. It wasn't harsh. Although it landed quietly, the force of its impact could be felt in every room corner. Ivanka's smile froze. The audience completely remained silent. Even the moderator seemed unsure if he had heard correctly. Like a wire that had been pulled too tightly, the subsequent silence was abrupt and unsettling. Ivanka blinked, confused for a split second before letting out a soft, awkward laugh. "Excuse me," she said, her voice just a touch higher than before. Obama didn't repeat the question. He just looked at her, his expression calm but unreadable. She quickly recovered, brushing off the moment with a practiced grace. "No," she said, still smiling, though her tone was thinner now. "Baron is my brother. That seems to be known by all." Obama nodded slightly, the corner of his mouth lifting. "Naturally," he said quietly. "It's just you talk about family as though it's one single shield that covers everyone around your father. I only wanted to know where that shield ends." Ivanka made an effort to reply, but her words became stuck in her throat. She felt a strange heat rise in her chest that was at once irritated and perplexed. She wasn't used to being caught off guard like this. Trying to regain control, she said, "When you grow up in a family like mine, loyalty is everything. You don't separate who you are from who you love. That is what maintains your strength." Obama smiled again, a knowing smile this time. "I can respect loyalty," he said. "But when loyalty starts to replace truth, it becomes something else entirely." The audience murmured softly. Ivanka's face tightened. "I don't understand what you're implying, Mr. President." "Not implying," Obama said calmly. "Just watching." He paused, letting his words settle. "Your father once said something in an interview. Something about how close he was to you. Many people found it unusual, but I'm sure he meant no harm." Ivanka's face became stiffer. She opened her mouth to answer, but the words didn't come out. Even though Obama's voice had remained perfectly even and respectful, it was clear what it meant. He was not directly attacking her. He was shining a light on the uncomfortable space between pride and denial. The things said and unsaid within her own family that had always followed her in whispers. She forced another laugh, but this time it didn't sound real. "I don't think that's relevant here," she said quickly, looking to the moderator. "We're here to talk about leadership, not personal jokes taken out of context." Obama nodded, his tone still gentle. "Of course," he said, "but isn't it interesting how the personal and the political always find their way back together, especially when we insist they shouldn't?" That line struck harder than any other direct remark. Although it appeared kind and polite, Ivanka was left with no room to breathe. She had based her argument on pride in one's family. And Obama had just changed that to a question of boundaries and the truth. The room remained silent. The cameras moved. In anticipation of her next move, everyone in the audience had their eyes fixed on her. Ivanka exhaled deeply. "My dad is devoted to his family. I will never, ever apologize for that." Obama gave a second nod, this time with a calm expression. He softly stated, "Love is never something to apologize for." However, love can blind people at times. It ceases to be love when that blindness affects a nation as a whole. It changes into something else. After that, there was silence. A long, heavy silence that seemed to hit everyone at once. Ivanka gave a brief downward glance before looking again upward with a calm but pale face. She desired to respond to him. She wanted to say something clever to make the situation better for her. However, her voice once again refused to cooperate. Obama remained silent and remained silent. Like a ghost, the question persisted in the air. "Is your son barren?" Echoing with a deeper meaning than just the words. And in that silence, it was clear to everyone watching. The balance had completely shifted. The silence that followed was like taking a long, uninterrupted breath. Nobody moved, no one coughed, and no one spoke. How significant Obama's inquiry, "Barron, is your son?" Still suspended in the air, it twisted around every thought in the room. Every heartbeat was echoing inside Ivanka's chest. Her polished calm, her armor-like confidence had fallen apart. She tried to break the silence with a smile, the kind that used to make awkward interviews or meetings less stressful. However, the smile now appeared fragile. Her search for a way out was frantic. She had faced criticism before. This was different from the harsh interviews, political scandals, and gossip columns. Obama had not been cruel in his words. They were worse than cruel. They remained silent. And perfectly timed quiet words had the power to break everything. The moderator's eyes darted between them, but he didn't speak either. Even he seemed caught up in the moment's weight. Ivanka's expressions were captured by the cameras as they continued to roll. Confusion, anger, and that niggling feeling of fear that you get when you realize how powerful silence is. Obama remained silent. He didn't lean back or forward. He just waited. He had long ago realized that silence could accomplish what debate could not. Tell the truth without speaking a word. The 31 seconds dragged on. Each second felt like a full minute. Ivanka once tried to speak, but nothing came out of it. She swallowed hard as she shut it again. She now felt as though the self-assurance that had been in her voice earlier had been forced somewhere deep down, encased in uncertainty. Finally, she managed to speak. She began, pausing for a moment to take a breath. "I think I said earlier that leaders find meaning in their families. It reminds them who they are fighting for." When she said the last thing, her voice slightly shook. She knew it, and so did everyone listening. She had lost the calm rhythm for which she was famous. Obama gave a soft nod as if recognizing her efforts. He then said, "Purpose is good, but purpose without responsibility can be dangerous." In that same quiet voice that made people lean in to hear him, it makes people believe they're right simply because they mean well. Ivanka blinked, her face stiffening. She responded, trying to regain her footing. "I don't think that's what's happening here." "Maybe not," Obama said. "But that's the risk when power and family become the same thing. You begin to prioritize protecting your name over your nation." That one sentence was more impactful than the preceding question. It didn't contain any resentment or accusations. Rather, it contained the unmistakable truth. Ivanka's hands clenched on her lap. She wanted to assert herself and point out to him that she had established her own name, career, and accomplishments. But everything she thought of sounded defensive, small, or scripted. And the one thing she knew she couldn't afford at that moment was to sound rehearsed. She tried to smile again, but her voice betrayed her frustration. She said quickly, "I think my father's record speaks for itself." Obama nodded. He added, "It does. That's why people are still speaking about it." The audience silenced their response. A few gentle laughs, none of them cruel, but enough to let people breathe again and ease the tension. However, Ivanka did not laugh. Realizing that every response was being given back to her, she pressed her lips together. She appeared smaller with each defense. And then, unexpectedly, Obama softened his tone. He said, "Being in that spotlight isn't easy, Ivanka. People expect you to stand up for those you care about. That's understandable. But sometimes loving someone means having the courage to question them." The room was affected by that line. It was gentle. It was a person. It was more like advice than a strike. But because it wasn't just about her father anymore, that gentleness made it hurt even more. It dealt with her. The first indication of genuine unease was a brief dimming of Ivanka's eyes. She tangled her thoughts and wanted to say something powerful and memorable. Every phrase that came to mind felt like walking deeper into quicksand. With a nervous laugh, the moderator finally tried to intervene. He stated, "That's certainly a lot to think about. Perhaps we should move on to the next subject." Obama, however, returned to his calm but firm tone before he could change the subject. No, I believe this is the subject. Leadership is not a collection of slogans, buildings, or profits. Rather, it is the outcome of your decisions when no one can stop you. Additionally, there are times when family can obscure those choices. Because of the weight of those words, Ivanka sat still. Her earlier energy was gone. Because she was aware that anything she said now would come across as an excuse. All she could do was breathe through the silence that followed. Then came the longest quiet of all. Although it only lasted half an hour, it felt like it went on forever, 31 seconds of nothing. No applause, no laughter, no debate. Just silence. Pure, uneasy silence. And something changed for everyone in the audience and at home who was watching in that silence. It was no longer merely a question. It was about truth. Obama had accomplished a rare feat. Ivanka, despite her poise and discipline, had no choice but to see herself in his argument because he had turned it into a mirror. She finally exhaled, not realizing she was holding a breath. She said softly, almost to herself, "Well, I suppose leadership is defined differently by each person." Obama smiled gently. "They do," he said, "but only one of them stands the test of time." The crowd began to clap slowly at first, then louder, the sound growing like a wave. As the room erupted in applause, Ivanka forced a polite smile as she looked down and then up once more. She didn't argue anymore. She didn't interrupt because deep down she knew that 31 seconds of silence had spoken louder than anything she could have said. And as the applause echoed, she realized the truth of it, that sometimes silence isn't just the end of a debate. It's the sound of someone losing it. When the applause faded, what remained was a strange kind of stillness. Not the tense silence from before, but something softer, like the air after a storm has passed. Ivanka was sitting there perfectly composed from the outside, but the calm felt contrived and fragile, as if a single erroneous word could break it again. The moderator's voice tried to move things along while the cameras were still rolling. But everyone was still focused on her. The discussion had changed. There was no denying who held the room now that the energy had changed. Now, Barack Obama hadn't raised his voice once, hadn't insulted her, hadn't even interrupted her. But somehow he had taken complete control. Ivanka smiled, that polished, professional smile she had perfected over years in front of cameras. She murmured, her tone light but careful, "I think I've said all I needed to say." She stood up after making minor adjustments to the papers on the table. The moderator blinked, unsure. "Are you, leaving us, Miss Trump?" he inquired. She gave a small nod. "Shh," she stated. "I have another engagement to attend." However, everyone in the room was aware that was not the case. The truth was written all over her in the way her shoulders were too stiff and how her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She wanted to leave before she was confronted with another question or sentence that could break down her defenses. She was not stopped by Obama. He simply nodded, a gesture of acknowledgement, not victory. "Thank you for your thoughts, Ivanka," he said, his voice calm and even. She turned to leave the stage and gave him a short, most mechanical nod in response. The echo of her heels clicking against the floor was the only sound for a few seconds. She carried the weight of pride, shame, and something deeper with every step she took. The quiet realization that she had been defeated by grace rather than aggression. Obama exhaled softly as she vanished behind the curtain and leaned back in his chair. The moderator turned to him, relieved that the spotlight had shifted, said, "Well," half smiling. Obama said with a light chuckle, "That was quite an exchange." He said, "Just a conversation." However, there are times when conversations reveal more than we anticipate. The audience laughed, the tension easing. But there was more to that laughter than that. Respect. It seemed as though people had just witnessed something that had nothing to do with politics or scoring points. It was about control, composure, and truth. Obama straightened, speaking in a calm but authoritative voice. "Wait. We all say, we want the truth," he said. "But the truth has this funny way of making people uncomfortable, especially when it comes too close to home. Not hearing the truth is the hardest thing. It's admitting when it's staring you in the face." The moderator gave a nod, said in a soft voice, "That's a strong point." Leadership isn't about having all the answers, Obama continued. It's about asking the right questions, even when those questions make people uneasy, especially then. In silence, the audience listened. His speech was not staged or dramatic. They flowed naturally, yet each sentence landed with precision. He paused, looking thoughtful. When power is treated like a family heirloom, it begins to protect itself rather than serve the people. When nations lose their way at that point, looking up at the crowd, he said, "The truth always finds a way to bring them back." It wasn't an attack. Stephen didn't specifically target anyone, but everyone knew who he meant. More importantly, everyone was aware of the context in which he spoke. The moderator, trying to bring some levity back, smiled. "You always have a way of ending things on a powerful note," he said. Obama smiled back, a small knowing smile. "I just believe words should leave people thinking, not arguing." Audience clapped again, louder this time, not because of a clever comeback, but because of the truth behind his calmness. It wasn't a humiliating victory. It was victory through restraint. Backstage, Ivanka stood in front of a mirror, touching up her makeup with hands that weren't quite steady. She saw a polished, flawless, and utterly exhausted reflection in her reflection. She had faced tougher interviews, sharper critics, but never someone who disarmed her without raising his tone. She had not been cornered by Obama with facts or allegations. He had simply held up a mirror and made her see what she didn't want to. For the first time in a long while, she didn't have a ready line, a clever spin, or a talking point to lean on. The quiet truth of that moment, those 31 seconds that refused to fade, kept replaying in her mind. Back on stage, Obama stood, shook hands with the moderator, and thanked the audience. As he walked off, the applause followed him. The respectful, lingering kind, not the wild, cheering kind. The kind that means people aren't just reacting, they are pondering. He went through the same curtain that Ivanka had disappeared through. The crowd's still faint humming sound. Someone backstage congratulated him on the discussion. He just smiled and said, "It's not about winning. It's about clarity." The night air outside was cool. He walked out of the building while cameras flashed, but he didn't look at them. He was not thinking about the debate or the news that might come out of it. He was reflecting on something he had previously shared with a group of young leaders. If you have to speak louder to make your point, your argument may not be strong enough. That night, he had proven it once again. Ivanka's departure had said everything words couldn't. Her silence, her exit, her carefully chosen smile. All of it told the story of what happens when confidence meets conviction and fails to hold its ground. The debate was over, but that one question, Baron, is your son would reverberate for much longer than anyone anticipated. And Obama's calm voice would always be there in that echo, reminding everyone who heard it that real power doesn't come from being in control. It's about respect.